Welcome to another episode of Nathan Builds Robots. Today we're going to be checking out the Ender 5 Max. Now, what I like about Creality is they send me all these machines, they don't give me any instructions, and they're just like, hey, make a video. And I gladly oblige by their requests. This is a 400 millimeters cubed Core XY machine, so it should print really fast, and I actually took a look at this already at FormNext. The process of putting this machine together was pretty interesting. I have a time lapse of it if you want to see how that went. But it came in this box, and it's flat packed, unlike most Core XY machines these days. Usually when you get a Core XY machine, it comes pre-assembled, but for this one, they figured by taking it apart and stowing it in a box like this, they're able to get the shipping costs down and really introduce this machine at a much lower price point. Oh, that was just the printer doing Creality things. I think it was just making sure everything was down at the bottom. So there's two motors controlling the Z-axis, and they were just kind of ramming into the bottom to make sure everything's all leveled out. So assembly, we're not used to doing that on these modern Core XY machines anymore. But since this is an extremely low price point for this type of machine, I think it's somewhere around $700 or $800 for a 400 millimeters cubed printer. I mean, that size is pretty impressive. And I noticed there was a lot of clever things that they did to make sure that this machine goes together properly. Everything here, all the main structural pieces are die-cast aluminum. I think these vertical beams are aluminum extrusions just to keep the costs down. And they do a really clever thing here where they've got these Z-axis side supports that are built in such a way that you undo a few grub screws and it allows them to expand and contract a little bit so that once this machine is all put together and bolted together, these pieces are the right size. Altogether, the assembly process was pretty simple. It took me under an hour, but it's something where you're definitely going to want to follow the instructions. Like most of the time when I get a machine in like this, I just throw away the instruction manual and wing it. But for this, you definitely need to do some specific things. It just has to do with the machine being so large and needing to go together in a certain way. But overall, the assembly process wasn't too bad. It was just 5 individual pieces. You had the whole Core XY stage all bolted together in one piece, pre-assembled from the factory. Then you have the heated bed, the bottom platform, and then the left and right hand sides. These are ambidextrous assemblies, meaning they're fully symmetric. It's not like a pair of shoes where the left one has to go on the left and the right one has to go on the right. The reason they do that is because it helps cut down on the number of unique components. So it makes this thing a little bit cheaper to manufacture. And wow, what is going on here? So they don't have any limit switches at the bottom, so it just rams into the bottom to get everything leveled. As long as it prints reliably and repeatedly, I don't care what kind of noises it makes during startup. So yeah, altogether, this machine is really impressive for how much volume you're getting for the price point. It costs about the same as a standard size Core XY machine, but it's absolutely massive. Previously, we took a look at the K2 Plus, which was a really cool machine. I like that one because it's got excellent print quality and multicolor and all that good stuff. But it's only 350 by 350 by 350. This one's 400 by 400 by 400, so it's a little bit bigger. They did a lot of really interesting stuff with this machine. I'm just pointing out a couple of the small details here. You can see this PCB heater is bolted to the bottom of this aluminum bed. However, this PEI sheet is a little bit different than ones we've seen in the past. Initially, I was about to be really upset that Creality used, well, I better stop touching it. It does have load cell automatic bed leveling. It looks like there's 4 load cells located under there, with a little CPU or something in there to help control everything. Anyways, this texture on the top made me think it was a polycarbonate sheet. So a lot of times for lower cost beds, they'll use a polycarbonate sheet that's just like a sticker that goes on top and it breaks down after a little while. And when initially looking at this, I thought that's what they were using. However, after taking a closer look, I'm realizing that this is actually a finer grained PEI. I actually think that's a huge improvement because you're not getting that bumpy texture on the bottom of your prints, but it's pretty much as reliable and low maintenance as a textured PEI sheet. I'm excited to see how the bed adhesion results work out for that. Now obviously one of the main differences between this and the K2 Plus over there is that it's not fully enclosed. Just putting a panel on all the sides and maybe a big lid on the top. As it stands, it doesn't come with an enclosure, and that's just one of the trade-offs that you have to make when you're dealing with a lower cost machine that has this big of capabilities. And wow, that's a loud motor. That was just a high-speed shuttling motion. Hopefully this thing isn't that loud when it's just running a regular print, but we'll see. Now this printer doesn't have the closed loop stepper motors that the other printer does. The K2 Plus has those more advanced stepper motors. This one just has really beefy and powerful standard style stepper motors. So this thing was definitely designed to a price point. They've definitely stripped back some features from the other printers, and they're just making this thing as cheap as possible, but it's still absolutely enormous. Now, I would consider this to be the spiritual successor to the old Ender 5. I think there was an Ender 5 Plus or something, and it was a 350 by 350 build area. It was one of the biggest machines that you could get actually for quite some time from Creality. Now, while that bed leveling process is finishing up, we're going to take a look at the rest of the machine. You can see down here we've got a belted gear reduction for the Z-axis lead screws. And it's got 2 lead screws here, and basically that just helps keep everything a little more even and stable during printing. So this should be a very stable platform for this thing to, go about its business. I really like what they've done with the electronics. They're all integrated into the base down here. They're really out of the way and basically unnoticeable. It just looks like a part of the frame. But inside of here you've got all the plugs for the heated bed. You've got the power cord for the main power supply. Everything's controlled on this little touch screen up here. It's not the most responsive or colorful touch screen. It's kind of a generation behind, but again, on a machine that's this cheap for how much stuff and capabilities that you're getting, and the size, that's just one of the trade-offs that you have to make. Up top, we've got injection molded plastic parts, as well as die-cast aluminum pieces. So it looks like this part is die-cast aluminum, this part is injection molded plastic, so it's just using a nice combination of manufacturing methods. Right now it just started the input shaping calibration, so it's shaking around a little bit. Down here I assume you've got all of the power electronics. The plug for this is like serious heavy-duty stuff. It's got a cable gland, and if you haven't installed one of these before, I've done some professional electronics work in the past, so I know what to do. But, make sure this is plugged in properly so you don't have issues there. It's got a nice solid plug on the inside. And I'm not sure if that's an AC heated bed. I assume that it is because of how large it is. And it looks like the power consumption stats over there say it can draw up to 1250 watts. Overall, this machine is pretty light for what it is. The frame is quite stiff. Oh, I probably don't want to do that while the input shaper is running, but the frame is quite stiff. Like, despite not being as solidly built as the K2 Plus, this thing is absolutely super strong. This is just using the bare minimum amount of material to get a printer that can be this big and fast. 2 stepper motors for the bottom. It looks like they're using pretty low-cost stepper motors for this. And since they've got that little belted gear reduction built in, you can get away with using these relatively small stepper motors. The Z-axis movement speed isn't going to be quite as fast, but you don't really need a fast Z-axis for most of the time you're printing. If you compare that to the K2 Plus, this thing is able to shuttle the bed up and down much faster, which helps, like when you initially start the machine up, it's able to do its bed leveling and stuff a little bit quicker. But, on this machine, lower cost, a little bit slower in the setup process, but I think it's just as fast, if not faster, in terms of the speed because of these massive X and Y motors. This is a 76 millimeter long stepper motor. That's what that 76 means. So that's a really big motor. That's about twice as big as anything we've seen on these type of printers in the past. And it's using a larger diameter pulley gear for the XY motion system. So you can take a look at that pulley. It's pretty beefy. Now overall this has a very industrial kind of look. There's not a whole lot of fancy design elements. It's just a nice utilitarian printer. The only thing that has a little bit of design flourishes is the print head here. In terms of a hot end and heat sink, it's using pretty standard stuff that we've seen from Creality before. I think it's got a circular ceramic heating element with a pretty long melt zone, and it's using their older style of extruder that has a little lock and unlock switch. Now, this machine doesn't look like it's going to natively support multicolor printing, so we'll have to see if there's any kind of third-party solutions or if there's some way to make the CFS kit compatible with it. But as it stands, there's no filament cutter, and it just doesn't look like it's designed to be that type of printer. If you want multicolor capabilities on a large printer, you're going to want to be looking at something like this K2 Plus, but for the Ender 5 Max, you're just looking at really big prints with a single material, and you're probably going to be sticking to stuff like PLA and PETG. Something a lot of people don't realize is, I'd say over 90% of the time, you're printing with materials that don't require an enclosure, like PLA and PETG. You don't need an enclosure for that stuff. Even some carbon fiber reinforced filaments, you don't really need an enclosure for that either. Really, you just need an enclosure if you're going to be doing stuff like ABS. However, when you're dealing with really large models like this, I think this is a use case where sometimes an enclosure is beneficial. So you've got a couple lights here. There's one LED light right along the backside here that helps illuminate the print area. And then there's probably an RGB type light that'll help you indicate, what your print job status is. Right now it's just orange. Maybe when we start up a print, it'll change colors. The spool holder is over here on the side. I'll just get a spool mounted up there so you can see what that looks like. So we've got our spool mounted over to the side right here, and then we feed the filament up through this filament runout detection switch. So filament runout detection is pretty nice. Normally, I don't view that as a super important feature. Like on most printers, I don't think it's super necessary. But when you're dealing with a printer this large, you might be running through multiple spools of filament for a single print job, and you don't want to run out of filament on a really big print, so having that filament runout detection sensor I think is pretty important in this application. Okay, it says the self-check is complete. So based on what I can see here, it looks like this machine is running Creality's version of Clipper. You should be able to log in and use a web interface, and you can control the machine directly from the slicer. For now, I'm just going to use the offline workflow. I prefer to work with my machines offline, so that's what you're going to get on this channel. Now, I think this is the USB drive that came with the printer. Let's see where to plug this in. We've got two USB-A ports off to the side, and it's checking the USB drive, and we have a print job here. It's a 1 shovel. I'm gonna not run the calibration because the machine just started up and did its own calibration, so it should be all good. Let's hit print. All right, here goes. Let's see what this thing can do. It homes off to the side there. You can see it bumping into some limit switches. So it's not using sensorless homing. Look at this print volume. This is absolutely huge. I don't know what I could print that takes up this much volume. I've got a couple ideas of things that I could print, kind of furniture scale objects. But for the most part, I don't think most people print things this large. But if you do need to print things this large, you're going to need a machine like this. And I guess you can always print small stuff on a big machine. This desk isn't particularly deep, front to back, but it's basically the same width as the entire desk here. And everything's overall quite efficiently packaged in here, but I do think that if they wanted to push it a little bit, they could probably get about another inch on the left and right sides. If they really wanted to have the print head come all the way over. That would make this printer about 450 by 450. You could really scale this up to a massive size. It looks like it's possible if you wanted to do some modifications and stuff. It's running Clipper, so you can change the printer.cfg file and make it think that it's bigger than it is. It looks like the heated bed got up to temperature pretty quickly. Now, it was already a little bit preheated from the initial setup that I did, but overall it seems like this thing heats up pretty quickly. And part of that is because it's a pretty thin aluminum plate here. This looks like 3 to 4 millimeters to me. I think the K2 Plus is using a 4 millimeter. This might be a 3 millimeter. Yeah, that's a 3 millimeter thick plate of aluminum. Compared to the K2 Plus, it's got a 4 millimeter thick plate of aluminum. Now you would think that when you make the plate bigger, you need to make it thicker as well to help compensate for that. But I guess that's not the choice they went with here. So you can see this light just turned green. I guess that's indicating that we've got an active print job going. Right now it should be doing the purge line. And let's see how this thing looks. Now, this is just unboxed, assembled, and I ran through the calibration just now, and we're gonna see what kind of results we're getting right out the bat. And yep, looks like we've got a great first layer here. This is kind of a prerequisite for any type of printer nowadays. It needs to get a perfect first layer. If you can't make a printer that can lay down a good first layer, then you might as well not even be trying. You just have to have a printer that works. And what do we have here? Looks like the printer is working. And we're just gonna go ahead and keep printing and see what we get. Now's a good time to look at the cable management. They did this pretty clever thing with this little tower in the back. This is actually just an oversized aluminum standoff that's used in like electrical panels usually, but they just repurposed it and attached a little swivelly head to the top. So basically this thing can traverse the whole large print area without anything getting bound up. So it's a pretty nice design. And now you can see those oversized pulley gears spinning on these oversized stepper motors. It's a really interesting machine they've got here. Looks like the first layer is going down pretty well. Alright, it just picked up in speed and turned on the part cooling fan. Now this has a, oh yeah, it's not held on with magnets. You actually have to undo a couple of screws to take this front piece off. It's a pretty slim design. You can see it's quite narrow from side to side. So it's like the width of a certain type of stepper motor. It's a smaller sized stepper motor. But you can see my desk is getting a little wobbly right now from the high accelerations that this machine is pushing. It's just kind of shaking this whole desk around actually. That's a little bit worrying. It'll be fine. We're not going to worry about that. But dang, this machine is fast. Wow. Holy cow, that's laying down the plastic. Anyways, what are you getting with this machine? Why would you get something like this over anything from the competition? Well, it all comes down to specs. Like, this thing is an absolute spec monster in terms of the print volume, the speed and acceleration, the extremely low price point. Like, this thing was optimized for a certain type of customer, and I kind of feel like I'm that kind of customer. I like printing out big stuff. I like a printer that's fast but easy to put together. It took less than an hour for me to assemble this thing. It really wasn't that bad. And this thing is just absolutely really fast. Like, this is incredibly impressive. Like, take a look at this. It slows way down to do the perimeters because, you know, you want good outer surface quality. But for the infill, look how fast it's completing the infill layers. And even the perimeters that aren't the outer perimeter, it slows down for the outermost perimeter. But even still, I think this thing could be tuned to be quite a bit faster and still get good print quality. But dang. And it looks like we've got a dual part cooling fan set up here. So there's like a smaller part cooling fan on the back. We got a bigger one up front. And oh my gosh, this thing is fast. It looks like they're using a linear rail up top here. There's a linear rail bolted to an aluminum bar. And yeah, that's extremely lightweight and fast. So I kind of get why they did it that way. Overall, this thing is really well designed. On the sides we have these hardened steel rods. They're quite thick compared to what I've seen on other printers. But with a printer this size, you need those large diameter rods so that they'll be stiff enough to support this thing as it's moving around so much. With those extreme accelerations. Yeah, this is a really impressive machine. It's always nice to see what Creality's working on. They send me all of their machines to check out in advance, so I guess I'm kind of in a privileged situation to see all their latest and greatest stuff. But this machine is seriously impressive for the price point. And if you don't want to spend over $1,000, but you still want to get an extremely capable machine, let's say you don't really need multicolored. Oh my goodness, this is loud. Hold on, let me get my decibel meter app out. So arm's length away, as is tradition. So the decibel readings are all over the place. Now it's averaging like 63 with peaks up to 70 decibels. And when nothing's moving, it's only about 50 or 55 decibels. But this machine is super loud because they're just using these old type of stepper motors that are cranked up to basically push out as much performance as possible. And you know, they're running those large diameter pulley gears. So this thing, you know, it's not the quietest thing in the world. There's no enclosure to help keep the noise in, like with the K2 Plus. But this machine is all about performance and size. and extremely low price for what you get. This would be great for anyone who wants to print out large-scale models that doesn't need to use exotic materials. So, you know, if you need exotic materials, you need something more like the K2 Plus or the X1C from Bamboo Lab, or maybe something from Prusa. But if you just need something to print out large PLA or PETG parts quickly, this would definitely be one of the first machines that I would look at. Like if I wanted to build a print farm for printing out large props or something. It's not the best machine to have in the office with you, like if you're some kind of creator, maker, artist type person that wants to have a cool machine in the side of your desk. I think something more like this K2 Plus is a lot more suitable for that job because, you know, it's a lot quieter, it looks better, it has more different interesting capabilities. But this one is all about, you know, on a budget, how much speed, how much size can we get? So there isn't much hype about this machine, it's just about delivering the goods, delivering the speed, the size, and at the price point that most people want. If you want to pick one of these up, I've got affiliate links down in the description below. I'm really excited about this machine because, I mean, this is absolutely insane what you get for the price. Wow, it's just downing that filament. So yeah, if you're printing out large objects and you don't need like a special material, if you're okay with just using PLA and PETG, which, let's be honest, is the best material for most jobs, this is just really quite impressive. And I think, you know, once the modders get a hold of it, I think you'll probably be able to get like an enclosure mod. You get some other upgrades thrown on here, however you like. Now, Creality is relatively modding friendly, unlike some companies out there. They just let you do whatever you want with this machine. And, you know, since you've got Clipper on there, you can flash your own firmware. You can run it offline. It does force you to agree to a privacy policy, which that's a new thing for Creality. I'm not sure I like that. But if you don't connect this thing to Wi-Fi, then, you know, your data is pretty safe on this machine. And since you've got two USB Type A ports, it's really easy to just plug things in and manage your data that way. I was looking up the size of the kind of standard IKEA cubby dresser things, and this is actually the perfect size to be able to print like entire modules that'll slot into something like that. So I'm thinking I might do some fun ideas with that. Have like a modular cabinet system. I think I'm just gonna watch this thing print for a while. Jeez. That's crazy. I have no complaints. Really, I think the closest competition to this thing is going to be the Soval SVO8. However, this is bigger, requires less work to put together, I think is faster, and it's just a great machine overall by the look of things. So, yeah, I mean, Creality's really bringing their A game here. But yeah, anyways, this is for printing large objects where you're okay with having a single color. I mean, multicolor printing is kind of, you know, the new craze, but I think it's kind of hype and overrated. Most functional prints that I do, I'm fine with printing it out of one material. And if you're going to be post-processing these in terms of like applying paint or something, then it doesn't even matter what color the printed object is in the first place. You just need something that's the right shape and size to be able to get the job done. I mean, for the machine to be this large and also this fast, I'm pretty sure this is faster than like any of the other 3D printers I've used. And it's also bigger than any of the other 3D printers that I've used. So this thing's just like, It's knocking it out of the park in terms of specifications. And it looks like print quality is pretty good too. So I'm not sure what you'd have to complain about with a machine like this. So yeah, initially I was a little concerned that the Ender 5 series was just kind of getting mothballed and not used anymore. But they've decided to resurrect the name, and they've made a really great printer out of it. So if you want to pick up an Ender 5 Max, it's got my seal of approval. Looks like our print is just about finished. For this video, I decided to not use any fast motion or slow motion. I just wanted you to see exactly how fast the machine is. And also, it looks like the light here just changed colors back to this orangish color. It's not really showing the color great on camera. I think the color's a little washed out for some reason, but this is what it looks like in real life. It's kind of like this dim orangish color. So yeah, if you had a print farm, you had a bunch of these, you could just take a look at this tally light and see what the status of the machine is. And you can see it's getting down to the bottom, and here's our finished print. Let's see how print bed adhesion is. This is a really nice print surface. This kind of finer textured PEI sheet seems really nice. If we take a look at the first layer, that looks excellent. We didn't have any bed adhesion issues. Stayed nice and stuck to the bed. And if we take a look at the rest of the layers, everything here looks quite good as well. This little notch here, it kind of looks like a skipped layer or something, but I looked. If you go to the actual model, you can see it has that little notch there as well. For some reason they just designed it that way. But yeah, the capability of doing super large parts, super fast, that's what it's all about. Alright, I'm excited to use this printer some more, but some people need to drop me some ideas in the comments section of what I should print with this thing. I've got a couple ideas to try out. If you've got any ideas, let me know in the comments down below. Alright, so this is the Ender 5 Max. Launched without too much hype, but I think it's a heck of a printer. So good job, Creality. You made another great printer. Oh, and one last thing, just for scale, here's a Bambu Lab A1 Mini build plate. You could probably fit 2 of these little things that I just built on this build plate. Maybe 3 if you got tricky and you flipped it around and, you know, packed them in there really tight. On this big print bed though, I mean, you could mass produce a batch of like 21 of those on one tray. Like, this thing is really geared towards print farm production with that tally light, the low cost, the, you know, high specs in terms of volume and size. I mean, that's all print farmers would really care about, right? And then with Creality Print, you can manage a bunch of these from one computer. So, pretty cool machine. I like what I see so far.